Presentation. Okay. Presentation of long-term recovery team's current projects.
We're going to start with the medical facility, and then we'll back up and talk about all the other projects. Okay. Today, we've come to a critical point on the medical facility, and we'll kind of go back over some history of the project and where we are now. And what we're looking at is we're hoping to get some feedback today on some of the new facts and opportunities that have been presented to us. It is not posted for action. This was just an opportune time for us to go ahead and very timely in order to get some feedback so we can move forward with our extension. Okay. Been a while since I've been on here. I've punched every button though. Okay, thank you, sorry. Okay, so just a little bit of background. We started phase one of the project was vendor selection. So we went through an RFQ process and Commissioner Russo assisted us with that. We had a committee, as y'all will recall, that she chaired, and we went through and looked at all of the proposals and scored them and came with a presentation to the Commissioner's Court. As a result of that activity, we selected 2 vendors to have negotiations with. So we proceeded into the second part of the project, which is phase 2. And we started meeting with both of the proposers. One is Amistad Healthcare Clinic, as well as Corpus Christi Medical Center. Both of those, we've had a number of discussions. We've been meeting almost on a weekly basis. And both of those parties proposed approximately 8,500 square feet apiece for the operations that they were proposing. We've also been talking to the architect and having negotiations, and I'll give you an update on that in a later slide. And we've also been talking to Amistad about a methodology as to the possibility of the Commissioner's Court providing a supplemental contribution for the operational deficits that they have. As you know, an amendment to our current contract is required. We'll go over those elements in just a few minutes. And also during this time, ACMSI has been, Aransas County Medical Services, Inc. has been working with both parties to talk about what the new building requirements would be, what the lease terms and conditions would be, and as well as, most importantly, what the pass-through costs will be. And Commissioner Casterline has been serving in this phase and assisting with all of those elements. We had the opportunity today for representatives from Amistad to be here, and I just wanted to give them just a quick opportunity. This is the first time that you would have been introduced to them face to face, and they were able to come to join us today. Dr. Baggerman is here to just kind of give you a little bit of information about Amistad, and Ms. Herrero is here as well, who's their CFO.
Thank you for the opportunity for us to come and meet with you. I just say very briefly, I've started to really get to know this area it's been over the last year, coming up and looking at the Rockport area, meeting with the people, and excited about coming up here with our services. So we have 5 primary services: adult care, primary care, dental, mental health, and women's health. And so our real goal is to get all of those up in this area. And then we meet with some of the local groups, as well as just a lot of the people at Seafair and, where we had our booth out there and just getting to know things. So I think there's not only the now, but also with the growth in this area. I think it's very important. Also finding there's a kind of a big gap in care, which is where the FQHC, it's Federally Qualified Health Center, we see everyone. Regardless of insurance, non-insurance, we take all kinds of insurance, 115 insurances. So basically we care for everybody. Uninsured, we had a sliding fee scale, and that's where some of the, the government helps so that we can come in and see people. We have a nominal fee of like $25 to see people. Of course, it costs more than that to do that. But the big goal of FQHC is to get where the people are and be available. And give them the best care that we possibly can. So that's kind of our niche, and looking in this area, I think it'll be very, very much neat and very successful. So I appreciate the entertaining us coming up here and all the help that Kim and Patricia have given us as we go through this process.
I think you said it all. I think the FQHC model is great. It works because we take care of the whole patient and have the opportunity to treat them from primary care to behavioral health. I was the director of behavioral health before taking on the CFO position. So mental health is very important. And I know it's much needed in, most areas, especially in areas that are harder to reach. And so we're excited to be here.
Can you tell everybody where all the places y'all have facilities in?
Well, our main site is in Corpus Christi on Brownlee, and we opened our second site in Robstown, Texas, which is about 20 miles west of Corpus Christi. And we just opened our third site in Aransas Pass last week.
Thank you for the information.
Okay, so next I wanted to talk a little bit more detail about the contract amendment and what issues are out there that we need to address. First of all, we have to amend the use. Under the current contract, as you'll know, we had originally submitted for a micro hospital. And now what we're looking at is a FQHC clinic, as well as with the Corpus Christi Medical and expansion of the ER rooms, a procedure room, as well as a diagnostic and lab.
What's FUSC?
Federally Qualified Health Center or Clinic. And it is a federal sponsored program and specific designation. And there's federal reporting associated with that as well. We also need to amend our schedule. Under our current planning process, we believe that we're going to need a 30-month extension in order to meet the opening requirements and the schedule that we're looking at right now. We also have to finalize what the space is going to be, the square footage, and our cost estimates for that, and to turn that in as part of the amendment. And we also have to amend location because location was originally the Little Bay Elementary. Some of the deliverables that are needed for that application for amendment is, of course, the use. We'll let them know what the current proposal is. The programming, which we do generally have, it's been turned into the selected vendor, and they've done a little bit of scenario making calculations for taking the core space and interpolating that into the full square footage that it will be needed. We have to update our budget and make sure that everything is split out properly in the budget. And we'll be designing to that particular budget. So that's what we will be living with. And of course, we mentioned the site. And in order to do that, we have to have an architect on board. Now, we have gone through and approved a vendor for that, Philo Wilkie. And we'll give you an update on that. But right now, they're not under contract, and we have not brought that forth to you pending this update, so we can make sure that we have packaged everything properly. And I want to reemphasize that the approval for the amendment is still subject to GLO approval, and we'll talk about that a little bit further. One of the things that GrantWorks has indicated to us is that the GLO may want a site plan for the project as part of the extension. We don't know that for sure, but what we're recommending at this time is to put together all the other elements and continue to work on the site plan aspect, but that's going to take a little bit longer. And we need to proceed with the amendment, and it's going to take longer because we have to have a surveyor on hand and for them to do their work as well as a geotech. So there's really three topics that we want to talk about today and get some feedback before we proceed in any manner. First of all is the architect's contract. We have also, it's been brought to us, our attention again, regarding an existing building that is a possibility here in town for the facility. We'll go into some details about that, as well as the supplemental contribution to Amistad for their operational deficits. So where we are with the architect is we do have an initial draft that's been negotiated. And by negotiated, I mean GrantWorks and county staff, excluding the legal department, have just worked to try to get the contract, the base contract in place in the language so that it meets federal provisions. That draft has not been reviewed by our legal counsel yet and won't be brought forth to you until their process that we've gone through the county attorney's process as well. As you know, we've got a $8.6 million construction budget that may get tweaked a little bit after working with the architect, but that's what it is right now. In having our weekly meetings with the operators, some issues have come up, and that's one of the reasons why we want to talk about it today. Corpus Christi Medical would like the ER to be put in the back of the building where the current EMS port is. And because of the limitations of the site, we don't have an architect on hand, but the site is very tight. And so we've been talking about doing a two-story building as opposed to a one-story building based on the square footage that we believe should be programmed. What that does is it puts Amistad on the second floor of the building and then in the rear. And so there's some, as well as there's some building connectivity issues that we're having to sort through with the General Land Office, because what Corpus Christi Medical has asked for is for it to be in the rear, for it to be connected, and for the nurses station to have a clear zone view from the existing ER rooms all the way through to the new ones. That creates some questions that we have to get answered by the GLO as far as what can that look like? Be connected, but not erroneously by any kind of contract or legal reason that the existing lease becomes part of the new lease. We need to make sure all of that stays separated. So we do have a letter to GLO asking them for a ruling on that and what is an acceptable method of connection. As it relates to the architect, there is some at risk that we need to talk about. As soon as we can get an architect on board, we think, and they're indicating to us that they can get the information we need for the amendment in 4 weeks. And that's assuming we don't wait, but we do all the work first, turn in the extension, and we do the site planning subsequent to the initial request. So in working with the GLO, it's hard to tell how long the amendment it's going to take before we get an answer. So during that time frame, we need to continue our movement forward, that momentum that's going to be required in order for us to even be able to deliver on an extended schedule. So if it took a full 6 months and we didn't receive a approval answer until that time, we are looking at up to $600,000 at risk for the architectural fees. So the way the contract is structured, we can terminate at any time, and only what's accrued will be charged. but there are accruals that would be happening during that time period. But we can do terminate for any reason in the current draft. And I'm sure there's going to be some extra things that our legal department will want to put in there in that regard as well. But everyone needs to be aware of that. Again, we could find out pretty fast, or it could take, months from GLO to actually get an official determination on the extension. The other thing that has come up is we got a request to talk about the viability and to explore the existing building. It came up before. It came up actually during our committee meetings as well. About a week and a half ago, that topic came up again. The reason why it did is because some of the changing conditions and discussions that have been happening that, I just mentioned. First of all, we've got visibility issues for Amistad space since it's going to be in the second floor and into the rear. We have those site limitations we talked about. There's, of course, operational costs that have to be considered, that they're more expensive in an existing building than in more expensive in a new building than in an existing building. And those pass-through costs are part of the overall process. So we went ahead when that idea came back up again. We went ahead and did some exploration of that. We received some information from the property owners about the property, if it's still available. I've got a few pictures to show you. We've taken a tour of the building. It's in a really pretty good shape. There are a few items that need addressing, but not a whole lot. Amistad would definitely like to get into the market sooner than later. And so that's one consideration. And we have been talking to GrantWorks. We don't have any final determinations from GrantWorks, but it does look like this is something that we can explore. So the existing building option is was formerly an urgent care building. It's been called several things, but it's here just right down the road. It's the yellow building next to Ace Hardware. The asking price on it is $2.4 million, and it's approximately 12,000 square feet on a little over an acre. I've got a few pictures here of it. This is the front of the building. The side with the drive, well, there's two drive-through drop-off points. This is, I believe, the entryway, where the reception area just coming into the facility. And this is the backside of that. There's also additional space behind there that is for nurse type stations and administration that would serve the entire area. And this was one of the urgent care rooms. There were two major ones in the facility, as well as there's 8 exam rooms already in place. All of that is on the first floor.
8 what?
8 exam rooms. So as I mentioned, Amistad has toured the building. The initial response is that it looks like it may work. Of course, everything just like us, they have board issues and discussions and that type of thing that have to happen. But it is possible that this building is in good enough shape and associated with the process that they might be able to move into it quicker. And, the space generally is the type of space that they're looking at. Just based on some initial discussions, they would have their primary types of activities on the first floor, which is serving pediatric and also the adults. And then there are other things like mental health that would be better served on the second floor, utilizing that space. The process for that is going to be just like the other properties that we've bought with GLO funding. There is a Uniform Relocation Act process that's a federal acquisition process. So that involves getting independent appraisals and sending notices to the property owner. We have, of course, this is a willing property owner. It would also include an option contract. And as all things go, just like the other portions of the amendment, this would be part of the amendment if this was something you wanted to pursue. In regard to the existing building and new building, the potential concept would be to build new space on the Aransas County Medical Services, Inc. site. And that would house the Corpus Christi Medical, and then Amistad would come over to the existing building site with their operations. And so I'll stop right here and talk about and answer any questions that you have
Kim,
regarding those two topics.
I remember I think the public bringing up the question, why weren't we considering the urgent care facility last time around? And I don't remember all of the reasons we were given for why it wasn't suitable, but can you run through those and explain to us why all those reasons no longer apply?
Yeah, well, part of it is timing. We've had a lot of things come up that make it potentially more viable to use an existing site. Before, we were putting out a RFP that was primarily for a micro hospital. And so this particular, all of the existing facilities in town could not have accommodated that particular use.
I'm talking about the more recent RFP, which was not for a micro hospital. And that was when we were told we couldn't consider the urgent care site.
It still actually had the micro hospital in there in the RFP. It listed a lot of different uses. It still was one of
But it
those.
wasn't exclusive to that. So for people who were
Right.
interested in doing other things, we were still telling them this site was off limits, and we told them why, I think, or at least you explained to us why. And I'm hoping to be
Yeah.
told why all those reasons don't matter anymore.
Primarily because of the partnership that we were trying to forge with, and we have, with Aransas County Medical. And so we were
And are
trying
they
to keep
okay with it
everything.
now?
I've talked to Patricia this much. This has just come up. They're aware of this request and this presentation. All we are doing right now is exploring. We're not asking for a decision, but
Okay,
it
so
was at a
they're-
checkpoint.
They may get on board at some point, but right now they're not yet.
We haven't asked one way or the other. We were asked to research this. We've researched it. It's time to come back and find out, what y'all's thoughts are as far as, which is the best way to go. And then, we'll work through it from there.
I have a couple of comments. As a member who served on that committee, I was very surprised on Friday morning when I visited with the judge about this item on the agenda and heard that so much had changed from what our selection committee had discussed. Now, I know we didn't set the terms, but we did put in many hours of thoughtful discussion and consideration. We had numerous hospital administrators, and I thank Nancy for being here today, who was one of them. Another hospital administrator is out of town. She was going to try to make it. That's Jennifer Reset. And since I don't see her here, she may not be back in town yet. But I was one of the ones who talked to both the judge and to Kim about that particular medical building. And I was told by both of those individuals why it would not work. And we also discussed it during our selection committee meetings. My concern is that suddenly, and I understand Kim says, we have been meeting weekly. We have been talking about this. I'm not sure who the we are, but to my knowledge, no one on the court, except perhaps the judge, is aware of what the content of those conversations have been. And so suddenly, for a building that was out of hand, dismissed as recently as August, and now it's back and it's on the forefront, is a great concern to me, especially when there is a connection between the seller of that property, and I mean the realtor, I don't mean the gentleman who owns it, and the fact that the person also holds the only tax abatement that the county has given, which is to the Rockport Harvey Housing or Pearl Project, and also is the only one who's participating in the PACE program that the county has, that it just is questionable that all of a sudden what was a bad idea is now a really good idea. And I'll listen to some more of your presentation when you talk, if you have any more, but the information that Amistad is asking for perhaps a different mix to help with operational costs. I'm not exactly sure how you phrased it up there. I know that our selection committee met in person, and I recognize the two of you. Thank you for coming. When we met individually with the proposers, and it was stressed to them very clearly that indigent healthcare would only provide if their patients were in the indigent program and had been approved by the treasurer's office, and that those rates would be Medicaid rates. If they had people who came in as uninsured but didn't qualify for the indigent, they might look for some relief from the healthcare sales tax, but that is an annual allocation that's given, and that needs to be approved during the budget process. So we were above board in everything that we talked about of what the expectations could be as far as financial support.
Yes, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Most of the items that you just addressed are in the PowerPoint.
All right.
Regarding that arrangement. So to back up again, the task of the committee was to recommend the vendors, which has happened. The next phase is ACMSI is taking the lead, and that who the we is the we. The we is ACMSI is holding weekly to every other week discussions with the operators to talk about the lease and the other elements of the discussions, and talking about what the space is going to be like and that type of thing. Through those discussions, there have been some issues that have come up as a result of what CCMC wants for their space. They definitely want a view corridor. They're very specific about where they want that to occur. It's to occur in the back of the building, connected with a view corridor, which then causes the space for Amistad to be on the second floor in the rear. We also are still waiting. Aransas County Medical is working very hard on coming up with a cost estimate for the pass-through. As you know, pass-through costs for new facilities, although it's just pass-through with no net income from it, it still can be substantial because you're dealing with a brand new building. Insurance for brand new buildings are more expensive. There's a lot of elements for that are more expensive, as well as there's administrative costs that are associated with that. As a result of hearing that conversation, the Mr. Casterline and had asked, can we look at that? Why can't we go back and look and just explore it? This is not a recommendation. This is an update to get feedback from the Commissioners Court on what direction that you'd like to go. And so that's what we did. We went and did this happened about a week and a half ago. And we went and put together the information as quickly as we could because we know we need to proceed with the extension. So that's where we were. That's where we are. That's how we got here.
And my thought and the deal when going through the meetings with ACMSI and the two different applicants is that with Amistad on the top floor, you're going to have, I would assume, a large amount of people that are traveling through the lower part of the building and moving in and out. And when we bounce it around, it seems to me like we could possibly have a bigger facility for both at less money.
Yes. Would you come to the but come to the microphone because people at home can't hear you.
Good afternoon, Tricia Arnold with Aransas County Medical Services. Some of this is new to Aransas County Medical Services. We were unaware that you were looking at a different site. That kind of concerns us. We have been having weekly meetings. Not everyone has attended every single meeting that we've had as far as weekly meetings. Philo Wilkie has only attended 2. So it's new information to us to hear that Amistad is going to be on the 2nd floor in the back. There's been no drawings presented to our team, to our committee. And finding out that
When she's talking about the back is that the building is going to kind of set to the back side.
actually they discussed it as an L shape. So therefore they would put the ER beds to the back, which they would be able to see from the nurse's station, which would help them with their daily tasks as opposed to putting it down somewhere else. So they talked about it being an L shape where the ER would be adding on to the back portion of that, finding a new location for the EMS to drop off patients, and then coming down the side of the building where Amistad would be in the front of the building. Now, there have been no drawings presented to us. So this is really news to us to hear that they would be put in the back on a top floor, treated like stepkids, because that's not exactly what we've heard. And Philo Wilkie has only been to 2 meetings. And then now we're hearing about another site. Well, initially, when we started working with the GLO in Aransas County, when you move to site B in the past, then ACMSI was no longer working with that.
Right.
So now we're hearing, looking at another site. So it went from site A to site B to now you want to look at site C. So either one of these providers really they don't have to wait on a GLO funding to move forward. So they could easily move forward with a ACMSI without any type of funding from the county.
Okay. The other consideration, I believe, was the fact that a new building, I think there's 4 parking places per 100 square feet or 100,000 square feet of building. So the parking would be a problem for a 16,000 square foot building.
There's plenty of space for adding on to the parking lot in front of the ER building. Even in front where Amistad would be, there's plenty of room right there to add on to parking. When you were talking about the old urgent care for a micro hospital, there was no parking. You'd be using the ACE hardware to park vehicles over there when looking at a micro hospital. So it really wasn't a workable place for a micro hospital. Now, it could be a workable place just for an FQHC, which is Amistad. And we're excited that they're coming here. Everyone should be excited that FQHC will be here, which is Amistad. They're wonderful, that they bring great information and great resources to our community, and we need more medical in our town. So I love the fact that they're here, and I'm excited that they're opening. However, this, like I said, this is news to us. So whatever other committee that she's discussing with, we are not privy to that information.
A week and a half ago, this came up, just looking for how to get the Amistad here as fast as they'd like to get here. And the building, as Commissioner Casterline, sitting there, and it's what, 12,000 square feet?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
we
you
can
could
buy it
have-
for a lot less than we can build 12,000 square feet for. And
But you can't do both. So if you want to do the urgent care as a site C, then that would be fine. You
That's
can
what
do
we're-
that with an
that's what we're talking
FQHC, but
about.
you cannot do both.
we're
You cannot
talking-
do both. You can't even afford that, to do the urgent care plus give money to Corpus Christi Medical Center and to add on to the ER.
That's
You're
out
not
of a
going to be able to
different
do
fund.
that. I'm sorry?
The money that we're talking about, well, we're talking about building Corpus Christi Medical Center, a building on y'all's site. Probably 1 story, maybe even more square foot than they were talking about. And putting Amistad in the other building.
I don't know if that's going to be functional for ACMSI at this point,
Why would, well,
because you're not going to have the funds to do both. 8.5 million is what you said? Sorry, one more time? 8.6. So you're purchasing $2.4 million building, plus you're having to fix that. And then you want to add on an ER plus add GI. You don't have the money for that.
And
I'm
I'm really concerned that ACMSI appears to be learning all of this today. Aren't they our major partners in this effort?
Supposedly.
Yes.
We're learning it today.
So we did have a brief conversation that it was being looked at. Now, as it
They
relates
don't seem
to,
to think so, and
That's the
I
key.
we haven't
certainly
gone
am
into
learning it.
any
Looked at.
detail.
And Pat doesn't, who was on the committee, has never heard it before today. A lot of us are hearing
Right.
this.
And I
just-
could not talk to Pat. We have a situation where we can't go talk to a bunch of commissioners because of the Open Meetings Act. So
Or anybody who was
I
on the
received-
selection committee?
I received, no, that's for the RFQ and to decide what vendors that we were using. Now we're into the next phase
So why
where
weren't
the
you
other
talking to
negotiations.
ACMSI? I don't understand. There seems to be a reason why nobody can
We
be.
have been having weekly meetings at their lead. I just sit in and there's discussions about the space and about the lease and all those issues that we talked about and showed on the screen.
Wait, I'm sorry. You talked about all the things that you just briefed us on in the presence of ACMSI
Yes,
representatives?
we've talked, the architect has only been able to be on the phone for a couple of times which is why I'm here, is to get permission to hire an architect.
But why is ACMSI surprised if you've been talking to them about it
So
all along?
the only thing that is different is a week and a half ago, we got a request to do due diligence on the other building. So that's what we did. And then in
mean
talking
we're
with the attorney's office, we felt like it was a good idea to come back and say, here's some different things. Here's some facts that have been coming out in some of the discussions. Do we need some feedback? Or can we go ahead and go forward and bring forward an architect's contract? Because that's what it takes in order to do an extension. There was a week and a half ago, it was brought up, maybe we should go back and look at this as a possibility. So we just started doing some information and we're bringing it to you.
Kim, what I'm not understanding is, in all the preparation for today's special meeting, an extraordinary meeting, not just a regularly scheduled regular meeting with an update, after, at least 10 days worth of prep to get us here. And in all that time, nobody talked to ACMSI about these issues that are
Patricia
surprising
and I
them?
briefly met, we had a brief conversation about the possibility that they would, look at another facility and having the other one there.
Patricia's
Now, apparently, we're
here.
not on the same page and I'll recognize that, but we've had, all the things that I presented have been things that we've been talking about in the, putting the building over back in where the the ambulance is, that type of thing. So that's what, we've been talking to the architect during our negotiations. That's been some of their commentary about that, the building is going to be more to the rear.
I think we're to the point now that this briefing and this meeting has actually done what we intended for it to do, and that's to bring out, make sure that everybody's on the same page. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't see that we need to go any further on this until y'all can get back together and you can come back with an update on this
So-
as quick as you can.
Conceptual. I mean, it's, the idea, as stated, came up a week and a half ago. It doesn't mean we're going to do it. It's something
right.
to study. If it's feasible and everybody can live with it, then
Yeah.
what's best for the community, and that's not what's best for so-and-so or what's best for the community is what I'm looking at. I don't,
Yeah, and the issue is really the architect, because we have to get an architect. We have to know that you're willing to go at risk in order to hire the architect to move forward and get whatever specifications, completely outlined, the budget updated, and all of those elements in order to turn in an extension. We need that.
Then the
We don't
sooner you
know-
talk to ACMSI, the sooner we'll be on that path.
Yes, and we have been, but the only wrinkle that's come up at all, and we needed this no matter what, is because we've been working with the county attorney's office. They want to make sure that that y'all understand and are okay with the at-risk portions of what we're talking about. We also need to know, and we haven't even gotten to that in the presentation, but the subsidy ask that we received as a result of that being projected and addressed in the RFQ that we had. That was part of it. It said we would entertain a subsidy request. And so we need that in order to know how to go forward with the
Kim,
architect.
I don't see that we could make a decision on any kind of subsidy at this
No
point.
decisions are going to be made today.
I'm sorry?
No decisions are. being
No,
made.
no, I understand that. There's no decisions today.
Right.
But my thought is we need to come back with this again when ACMI, the Services Center.
ACMSI.
Yeah, I always get that. mixed up.
Yeah, not
And I sat
IC.
on that board for a while. Y'all need to get your heads together because it appears to me that part of this is a shock and, or certainly was not anticipated. I don't
Shock's good.
think that another couple of weeks, I don't know what the timing is, whatever, we're at the end of the year, we're trying to get a lot of stuff done here. But this is too important for us to make a decision until everybody knows everybody else's position. And so I would say put this off till the first meeting in January, or if we can, I would say put it off to the first meeting in January. I don't know whether that's a good idea or not. But and the other thing too, I believe, and Pat, you might want to enter into this too. I believe that anything that we do from this point forward doesn't necessarily need to be vetted through the county attorney's office, but they need to be brought up to date with where y'all are, because Lord knows I'm not knowledgeable in that area, and I appreciate the work that Commissioner Russo and Commissioner Castelline have done on this and everything. I appreciate the work that you've done, and I don't think anybody's mad at anybody, but I'm not comfortable with going forward on this on another conversation until emergency services and the county have come together, because this has been a partnership from the very beginning. And I don't like seeing one partner unclear as to their position. So I would say, let's just move on to the next item and give and expect something back by,
We have a problem with,
the next part of this item.
okay.
Well, my concern is Kim is asking for a decision. And I know we're not going to make a decision because this isn't an action item on the agenda. It's just a discussion.
But direction.
But direction as to the architect. I don't know that we can make a decision as to the architect until we know if we're looking at one building. And I'm concerned that the architect is providing some sort of guidance, although not on a regular basis. And I am guessing that we are probably being billed for that.
No.
They're just doing that
No.
out of the kindness of their heart. That's good.
Yeah, and actually, it would have been a lot better under the normal grant situation. We have some work that's done in advance of a contract by architects and engineers in order to prepare, a grant application. That's kind of what we're used to. In this particular case, they're not comfortable in doing that. So we kind of got the original programming from
Who's
both
not
of the architect.
Architect.
Because
Yeah,
we're out
they
over
wanna
our
wait till
skis and they know it.
Yeah.
We're pushing this without knowing where we're going yet.
But we don't really know what the scope of work is to tell the architect, whether they're building a building over at the complex, which is what we were thinking they were going to do. And Patricia's explained how that could be done and accomplish both goals, which is what we also talked about in the selection committee, I believe. I'm looking to Nancy, she's nodding. Or if we're going to ask them to build in a smaller building over at the campus, and then we would have a larger building somewhere else. I don't even know if ACMSI will take that on. And we're not really supposed to be in the business of being a landlord. And so I wouldn't want the county to own that building. So who is going to have that building? So I don't see how we can make a decision on the architect.
Yes, and that's why I brought all of this up, because it is important that we move expeditiously. We're getting to the point
Why?
where because what we're hearing from Grant Works is at a certain point, we're taking too long.
Oh,
And they
okay.
GLO needs to see that we're actually going to execute. And so right now at this point, we're getting behind. It's taken a long time to negotiate a contract, just to the point where we have it right now with the architect. And that, again, hasn't received review by the county attorney's office yet. But in order to be able to do that, we have to know we were hoping to get some feedback on what general direction you wanted, so we could hone in on that and know that we were, using our time appropriately. And that's why we took this pause and came back to say, okay, here's some new information. What do y'all think? You either do or you don't. I mean, it doesn't matter to staff what direction it is, but we did get a question that was asked. We do have, some things that have to be worked through, and we have to be heading in the right direction with the right facts in order to be able to do that.
I can understand that we're risking running out of time with GLO. I get that. I think that we can ill afford to lose time by letting a lot of developments happen for weeks at a time and not clue ACMSI in, so that we're in the position we are in today. They need to be on board with anything we do here, or else we need to start all over and have a completely different approach from the one that we went through so exhaustively all last fall, winter, spring, and summer. If suddenly the idea is we're going to do it without ACMSI's okay, that's one thing. We should know that. But if we're doing it with their okay,
That's not
then
what
they
we-
shouldn't
that's not
be
what we did.
surprised by what we started doing 10 days ago. That's
We were asked to explore something. We explored it.
so tell them,
So now
talk to them, find out what they think.
we had a limited conversation up before this.
You took them
Um,
by surprise. They've said so.
Well, I understand. So
Right, let's put this in perspective.
So I think that we had a special populations meeting with a few different counterparts to introduce Amistad to some of our other community members. And when Kim was saying that it was going to take until 2024 for any of the buildings to be built or things like that, maybe that's what sent her in a different direction, because I had
Oh.
made contact with Amistad in reference to, we have a part-time suite that's available if they needed to move in now and then move over, which is at 400B Enterprise at the medical complex, that they could utilize that space until it was built, and then they can move into the other one. So maybe that's what sent her in a different direction, to look for something that was already built, faster, whatever that would work for
Yeah.
Amistad.
I'm not saying it's a terrible idea. It may turn out to be a good one, just that you need to be more in the loop.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. It's brand new to us that there's a site C being brought up, and in the past, that's when ACMSI stepped back when there was a new site.
Right. It's not like that's a
available.
new idea to you. It was brought up before and you made it very clear what your problems were with it. All the more reason to bring you into the loop if we want to bring that back on the table.
But I understand that she might be trying to expedite in helping Amistad come to Aransas County faster.
And I
Then
think in the
2024, which I-
beginning, I think everybody figured it was going to come down to one entity
Mhm.
that applied to use the building. I think everybody involved was surprised that there were two. And through y'all's looking at all of it, it ended up that it might work out that they both be in the same facility.
Right, we weren't on the committees where they selected it, and so I was happy that they selected
Well, in
both. I
fact-
thought that's great. One's already in town and we need an
I don't
FQHC.
remember how many things were sent out. But I was I'm astounded, I guess, that there were only two responders to 100 or more things sent to different people, which tells me that, we would have liked to had some kind of a hospital, but there was nobody out there thought that was a viable offer. So, we came to, I think, two really good possible occupants of wherever they go.
Right, and that's what I think maybe changed the direction for Aransas County long-term recovery to
You know,
expedite.
I'll have to, in Kim's defense, it wasn't her idea to look at this building. It was Commissioner Castelline and I were talking to her one day and she was talking about Amistad wanting to get in here. So, well, what's the possibility? Not, are we going to do it? Not anything. What's the possibility?
Because it seems like we really might be able to end up with both people having a larger facility than what they were planning on. I mean, if we went to build a 1-story on y'all's site of a possible larger
Well,
facility, and we had this one over here too, if it would work, that we very well could come out.
But based on the amount of the GLO grant funds that has been presented to
Yeah.
us, you can't afford both.
yeah, I just,
So you need to really think about that.
And if we can't afford both, which we need an architect to decide that, it's going to be more affordable just looking at the numbers. So we were always going to have to design to our budget. That's always been an underlying assumption and understood. So you have to look at what's the difference between building a smaller of new space, which the Corpus Christi Medical is going to be more expensive per square foot because of the nature of the facility and how much that kind of space costs versus clinics costs. So it's likely that a used building is going to be cheaper in combination with a new building. Now, do we know for sure that both buildings at 8,500 square feet can go brand new with the new construction costs? We won't know that until we get our architect on board and do whatever value engineering we need to do in order to make that
It seems to
accommodate.
me like we need to decide who we're gonna get and then we have whether it's
decision.
Amistad or whether it's, I mean, I like the idea of having both of them. But that just spreads us out.
So, we think it's possible to do both. We think there may be some value engineering that has to be done if both of the 8,500 square feet with new construction costs, there might have to be that. We've always known that, but we can't do that until we have an architect in place to help us accomplish that. We can also look at the other. And like the judge was saying, we were asked to look at something, and as quickly as we could look at it, we brought an update. We didn't move forward with any new ideas. All we did was do some research and come back and report to the Commissioners Court.
Don't kill the messenger.
Well, I think the situation we have got ourselves into is 2 commissioners knew all about it and couldn't tell the rest of us because then that would be a quorum and we'd be in trouble with the Open Meetings Act, which is, I think, a good reason for 2 commissioners, not with the best of intentions or any other reason, to carry it forward so far without handing it back over to the people, the staff that are supposed to be working on it so that we can all find out about it at the same time. If you had worked with ACMSI and had figured out all this stuff, then you could have come to us and told us all. Or we could have all gotten notice at the time that we got a special meeting. But what we're hearing is it had to be kept confidential and the wrong people couldn't hear. And the whole thing is getting wrapped around the axle. And that's not what the Open Meetings Act is meant to achieve. And certainly there's never any reason for us to risk getting crosswise with our major partner here by leaving them out of the loop. Even if that's the explanation for why some of the rest of us couldn't be told what some of us knew what was going on, this is just bad procedure backwards and forwards. And secrecy, we don't need more secrecy on this project, which has already been so contaminated by it for a year. This is just bad.
This is as quickly as I could have gotten it on the agenda. I was
It
asked
is
a
not,
week
I'm not
ago.
saying get it on the agenda faster. I'm
Well, try to
saying
be, you were
talk
talking
to
about
AMSI,
transparency.
ACSMSI. This is just not right.
all right, that being said, any further discussion on this is,
Maybe we
Judge,
got
we
to
have
hear
the
about the
other
other,
part.
the other
Yeah.
grants.
The other part of the project list.
Ms. Rutledge, I know you're against this, but if you'd like 5 minutes, we'd certainly give it to you.
you present on the hospital, I'll speak after.
We're going to drop the hospital and go to the other grants.
Yeah, we're just talking about the other grants.
And then I'd like to speak on.
All right, come on up.
And may I just say it's medical services facility,
What is?
not a.
Oh, not a
hospital.
hospital, right? Sorry. Originally, it's still a hospital grant because we haven't amended it yet.
Right.
That's all I meant.
Thank you, Judge and Commissioners. My name is Christy Rutledge, 1411 Dana Drive. And for the record, I am not against a federally qualified health center, and I'm not against the two operators that the selection committee went through. In fact, that selection committee was put together as a result of citizens being concerned about a real estate transaction that could not be revealed to voters. That we were not going to pursue a micro hospital as a county, and that real estate transaction was hidden from the voters who went to the polls and voted in favor of a micro hospital. Micro hospital was never viable. I read the entire grant. It took a lot of work to get that grant from the Texas General Land Office because the county attorney at the time would not allow public information. I want to thank Ms. Osteen, our county attorney, assistant county attorney, for getting involved and making sure that commissioners were informed as soon as possible, and for hosting this meeting today so that citizens could find out what's kind of been going on in backroom deals. It appears that Ms. Commissioner Rousseau has recognized the fact that this building is the real estate broker on this building is a member of the EDC. It appears that some backroom deals have been made behind our wonderful Aransas County Medical Society for a real estate transaction, and that commissioners are asked to kind of give the nod to go out on the hook for a very risky $600,000 architectural fee. How much have we already been gone on the hook for this past 2 years that this whole micro hospital grant has been negotiated? How much has Grant Works billed on this? I'm saying that we have 1 year, a little over 1 year, or August the 2023, that occupants are supposed to be in that building. I heard Patricia Arnold say that Amistad could go ahead and start right now in a space in their building. And I think that's great. And we should go ahead and move forward with that. This committee, the selection committee, were professionals. They were experts in this field of setting up hospitals, of managing hospitals. And our long-term recovery team and members of their EDC, and no offense, Commissioner Casterline, you are not experts in managing hospitals. What are we talking about here? Because it's all generalities. Are we talking about a county-owned building where ACMSI is going to back out, and now all of a sudden we're in the business of owning a possible hospital, a possible taxing district? Do we understand if that's feasible? Because this selection committee went through the entire feasibility, and they're experts at it, and they came up with a plan that fit within the budget. And I trust Patricia Arnold to know that the two operators that came forward, and there were only two, because you're right, Commissioner Casterline, it's not feasible to open a hospital here in Aransas County, or it would already have happened. I hear the ER is doing great, and they're doing great because it was the right time and they had the right setup and the right partnership. So we need to trust the experts. Whatever proposals are put forward need to go back to this selection committee. They need to be fully vetted. Somewhere in the beginning of this grant process application for the GLO micro hospital, the long-term recovery team canceled the feasibility study, the financial feasibility study, and the Texas General Land Office started to ask questions. Is there going to be clawback? We're worried that this is not going to happen. We are worried that this is going to be a failure financially. And they started to question. There was two buildings originally proposed, Building A, Building B, Little Bay Primary. That's where your grant still resides. The reason you're running out of time is because this whole project has been mismanaged by long-term recovery team and the EDC. You all need to leave it to the experts and let them move this project along on the timeline. The county is not an expert and the long-term recovery team and the Economic Development Corporation and hospital management are set up. So put it back to the experts who we trust as citizens and give us back all of the details, not generalities. Let us know what you're proposing is financially feasible. Let us know what our share is. Let us know who's going to own the buildings. We knew all of that, when the operators were selected, and we trusted that because we trusted that committee to act on the best interest of the taxpayers and the county. So let's move forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that being said, we are going to move on to the next item. Discuss current status of the fiber optic project.
Bring that up again. It's not in the order of the PowerPoint, so it might take me a second. I'll get there. Sorry. Okay. On the regional fiber optic, just an update of what we've been doing. The last time we spoke, we talked about engaging with Coastal Bend Council of Governments to see if they would act as the actual applicant for the funding. There are a number of different sources of funding, but specifically we've been honing into one particular source, and that is the Community Development Block Grant Mitigation Funds. If you'll recall, we turned in some original projects. They're on the bottom of the screen. We had the fiber optic loop, as well as the Ruby Allen, Newcomb Point, and also Fulton Beach Road. That was a first round competitive grant that we went for with a 1% grant match requirement. What ended up happening is many different communities did not receive any funding from that round one for the CDBG MIT funds. As a result of that, the GLO decided to go a different path, and instead of doing a second round of competition, that they would make an allocation. They would take the second amount of funds that were remaining, and they would distribute it throughout through the COGS. And it would go through the regular process that we're familiar with, which is, it's called method of distribution. And they do public hearings. They look at various factors that they decide to consider in the disaster recovery, and then they make an allocation based upon that. That's how we got our first allocation for the CDBG Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds. This is that new portion, but it's for mitigation funds. They were originally going to get about $75 million allocated that was going to be distributed in the region. Now that there's not going to be a second phase of competition, that allocation has risen to $179 million. What that means is that we did a lot of research. We talked to the COG. They have expressed interest in sponsoring a regional fiber optic loop in accordance with the study that y'all had done with Community Development Block Grant Funds. Our portion of the loop is about $22 million. The entire structure with all the looping for the entire area is about $88 million, including engineering. So what the intent is that the COG will get a memorandum of understanding from all the associated cities and counties that are part of that loop.
That's about 25 cities and 7 counties.
Yeah, about 18 cities and 7 counties. So a total of 25 entities would be partnering together, and it would be a very, very regional project. What they would do is they would take funds out of that distribution, out of the 179 million, and fund the whole project for the region. That will leave more than the original 75 million that will still go through the regular method of distribution process. So that's the concept right
Yeah,
now.
whenever you say that, you're talking about the COG, right?
Yes, sir. The Coastal Bend COG. There are some other grants that are out there. We're working closely because through the American Rescue Plan Act, competitive, or it's actually non-competitive funds, states received some allocations for funds. Texas is getting 500 million. They've already decided on 75 million of how that's going to be spent, but there's another 425 million available for these projects. We don't know the criteria yet. There are a whole lot of other funds out there that we have not been pursuing because they require matching funds.
Kim,
This is unique.
I just want to be sure that I understood what you just said about there weren't going to be 2 rounds given to the COG. There's just the one and how much they're getting. So did you just say that the COG has agreed to fund that regional fiber optic loop?
Yes. So originally there was 75 million. Now it's 179
right.
because GLO is not going to go through their competition. What they would do is take the amount of money that's needed, which we think right now is 88 million based on the study, and it would fund all 4 lines, including our line, which is where 22.
So we will not be looking to match funds or do anything as far as the fiber optic
Right.
loop.
Right. It would all
That's
be
good
paid
news.
for. Yes, ma'am.
And
It would all be
and you're
paid
saying
for.
COG has actually made this determination, not just that we're hoping for it soon. They've actually pretty much decided 88 million is to go to fiber optic now.
That is the proposal. They have to go through the process themselves because they're a qualified entity, just like we are, just like the other cities. And when we go through the citizen participation process, they will come out and say, this is the project, that we want to do. We'll come out. We don't know what our allocation is going to be, but we're going to say, well, we want airport improvements and we want to support the COGS, initiative to do the regional fiber optic. We don't know how much we'll ultimately get
Is the
independently.
Is the 88 million the total they want to spend on the region, and some part of that is fiber optic? We don't know how much yet.
It's all fiber optic.
Okay.
There are 4
How the
different
airport
alignments.
fit in? Is that a separate?
It was in the feasibility study.
I mean, are you talking about airport
optic.
fiber optic or something?
No, that is a connection for us, it's a connection between Corpus Christi and Victoria.
When you mentioned the airport, I'm trying to understand if that's a competing project or part of the fiber optic project.
The proposal, it is competing to the extent that, they're hoping to pull that 88 million out of the available pot. And then the remainder of the funds would then be something that we all get an allocation. We don't know what it would be.
I'm just trying to attach numbers to general pots then. 88 million for fiber optic and some more for the airport, we hope.
We're hoping so.
Okay.
Yes. We just don't know, what they have not announced their method of distribution yet, and they haven't received public comment either. And both of those are some steps. That is anticipated to happen in February. So it's going to be important that the COG gets all the participating entities to sign a resolution and be on board with the concept prior to that time.
Now, would that just as a general question, would that prevent from any private companies from maybe tying into the system, paying a fee, to do so, but the COG would own the line, right?
So
Or
yes, the
basically-
COG would own the line, but what would happen is it's an open access system. And so while the line is being built, they would do an RFP for operators. And then those operators would, be able to tap into those lines, do the maintenance and operations, and offer service and provide that last mile. This is the backbone. It's not the last mile portion. And we would be looking at the private sector to operate the system
So
in their area.
If an internet company came in to city of, or to Aransas County, and they wanted to tap into that line, they could do that with COG's permission to do that, all the safeguards, and then start charging people for that, like, you know, if they was like not Spectrum, you know, some company not Spectrum, you know,
Right.
come in and tie into it.
Yes, and they wouldn't have that initial capital investment. So they theoretically, and based on the proposal process, should be able to keep those prices down because they don't have that capital outlay to start with. So I still relist airport through our presentations has always been our number one priority for the competitive portion of the funds that are going to be available. But we do note that we still have 3 other projects depending on what that allocation would be. And of course, we would come back to you to find out what your priorities are should we get a larger allocation than the what would cover the airport.
And can you make this PowerPoint available to us, please? Thank you.
We'll, I'm assuming we'll post it on with the agendas like we usually do. We'll get it out there. Okay.
So the only thing left on the fiber optics issue is for the court to decide whether they support it or don't support it, right?
Yes.
Or support the COG in the, okay.
Okay, the next item. We're gonna do Workforce Development Center
Okay.
project.
Okay, as you recall, it's a $2.1 million project. The building has been purchased. We have received reimbursement for that expense from EDA. The architect is underway. Those are donated services. The architect is Philip Ramirez with Ramirez and Turner out of Corpus Christi. They're donating their service. They have done multiple workforce development centers in the area. We've also issued a request for qualifications for a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineer. That bid is going to close on the 17th of this month. We have a selection committee that will meet and evaluate those proposals, and we're hoping to bring that back on December 13th.
Questions? All right, item number 4, discuss current status of community block grant mitigation projects.
Okay, we're going to start. Okay, so most of the projects that we had on our initial list that we started with over 3 years ago have been addressed. The only ones that have not are the ones that I just outlined on the community development block grant, the mitigation method of distribution process. Those are still pending. Those are at the bottom of the screen. We do have some that we have not been able to identify a funding source for. That's the Hurricane Dome that was originally on the list. That has primarily fallen off because the sources available for that require matching funds. And then we have some drainage projects, Pete's Bend and Club Lake. Mr. Reed can address that, but I believe Club Lake is on was on a recent presentation he made on drainage, but he can outline if that is the same project or not. But so mostly we've gotten funding for everything. If you recall, the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery through GLO was almost $54 million allocation. Most of that money is being spent on streets and drainage, that being almost $38 million. And we've got Mr. Reed here to kind of give you an update on where we are in the design and bidding and construction process.
Thanks for warming up the crowd.
Okay, so we have 8 projects in this group of grants. Do y'all want me to elaborate on what these projects are or no? Okay,
I
Linden,
mostly want to hear timing, I think.
okay. So Linden Street, I actually got 60% plans last Friday on that. It's moving along. They're all moving along. I think everything is at 60%. Southeast Aransas County, Ruby Allen is I'm about to get 60% plans for those this week, I think.
Did you say about to get 65%?
60% plans.
60% plans being, that's a kind of a way station marker that the grant agencies impose on us.
I don't know if it's imposed by the grant, but it's typical in engineering. You have milestones, 30, 60, 90, and then final.
Okay, so what I'm interested in here, I don't really know whether it's, 2 months between each one, or what
Yeah.
does that mean we are if you got a 60% plan?
Okay.
And are these things that come from the outside engineers that you hired, I guess?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we're going to start getting 100% plans in January. There's 8 projects. I think we have 2 scheduled in January, and then in February, and then in March. So all these projects are moving concurrently. Some of them are a little ahead of the others. Linden Street, I think this shows construction starting in 7 of 22. So, it's getting there. Southeast Aransas County, 12 of 22. Ruby Allen starting 8 of 22. Copano Heights, let's see, construction 5 of 22. Holiday Beach, 9 of 22. Loop 1781, 9 of 22. Rattlesnake, start 5 of 22. Southwest Aransas County, 9 of 22. And that's all of them. So, like I said, January, we're going to start getting final plans, and we still need to get permits, and there's no way to know how long that's going to last, but they're working on those permits. So, this summer, I think we'll start working on construction plans, and throughout the rest of the year. And they should be going under construction concurrently, assuming we have enough contractors to do that. But it's moving along.
I think I've been telling people we were shooting for the end of 2022, and it sounds like you're still on that, with maybe one of them possibly slipping over to early 2023.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah. That's it.
Right.
Don't plan on taking any vacation.
Ever again.
Glad you mentioned that, Commissioner. I'm going to a conference. I'm leaving right now.
You back in 2024?
I'll be back in 2024. I'll be back Friday.
All right. Downtown Anchor Project.
The one that's showing up right now is the community building. That'll be the community building, the plaza, and the parking lot. And that project is, we're meeting tomorrow to finalize the little bitty details left to go to pre-bid and set a pre-bid date and set a bid opening date. So that project is moving along.
Now, is this the one with the courthouse and the city hall? Is that what you're talking about?
No, this one is, it's just the third building that'll go in that community. This will be our community building.
And where's
Community.
that going to be located?
It's going to be in the plaza, and I guess we need to, at the next commissioner's court, I'll bring it in and show you all. But the building looks a lot like downtown Austin Street type buildings. So it's made to look like it belongs there.
Got its own derelicts come with it.
What's that?
But
anyway, so that project it's coming in pretty well. And it's, I think we're going to be fine with it. And it starts, we'll start construction in March, and finish it a year later. It'll move a little faster than the courthouse will. You want to hit the next one, Colin? The medical facility we've already talked about.
Wait,
Go
can
ahead.
are you going to tell us about the rest of the courthouse project where we are
Yeah,
on
it's
it?
coming up. It's not
Okay.
part of the same funding source. Oh, is there a remote here? Okay, let me see. Okay, Rockport Center of the Arts parking lot. This project has, it has a pre-bid of 11/29. It has bid openings on 12/9. It has come in well under budget. So we can shift a little bit of that funds to other places. And it's going to be 60 spaces, 60 parking spaces. We're addressing some drainage. We're draining it into the center, into a stone filter, and then down into a culvert. So we're doing that. I think it's going to be a nice complement to the train depot and the community down there. It's really nice. It's going to have lights. It's going to have irrigation. It's going to have all of the things you have. Go ahead.
Do you know that it's coming in under budget?
Because we have professional engineers that provide those numbers to us. So we get estimates. And I questioned them. I said, have you double checked this? And they double checked the current funds that are current pricing that is out there.
So how much do we think? Just
A couple
roughly?
100,000,
Couple 100,000?
maybe able to shift around. The next one is the radio tower. I was a little late because we had pre-bid this afternoon for the Aransas County Emergency Services Radio Tower, which will be located on Route 188 and bypass 35 in the facility that is currently the water treatment plant, not the treatment plant, but the water tank and water tower there. This project is coming in around, I would say it's going to be around 230,000. We're not sure yet. It's a turnkey project, so there's no architect or engineer involved. And we had 6 possible bid providers today. So we have some questions to answer, but this one's coming in. We're estimated at $230,000 grant, $214,000 for construction. Fiber optic loop study you already know about. Now, the courthouse. The courthouse went to pre-bid on the 5th of November. Had, I think, a decent turnout on that. Okay, sorry. The latest and greatest budget we received on the 45,912 square foot building is at $22,702,912. That was the last bid we have. We broke it down for you in the construction is $19,324,681. A&E architect and engineering 1.3 and 704 for the CMA. And then the rest of it is items like I call them testing and other miscellaneous items, but it's furniture, it's a lot of little things. It's electronics or IT stuff that goes for Colin. So those are in that $2,085,122. And that came into the total bid, the total budget of $22,702,000. This has been about 3 different budgets that presented, and this number's held pretty well. So we were concerned that we might be seeing some huge spikes, but the CMA has taken that into consideration when he put this budget together. And so I think we're going to be okay with it. We kind of cleaned up a little bit on the funding sources because you all have heard this many, many times, but these are all the various places where funds are coming for this project. All right. This is HMGP. This is hazardous mitigation 404 FEMA 404 grant administered by TDM. Little Bay project was a $13 million project initially when we initially made the application. But after we did all the studies, we did all of the modeling and things like that, a lot of the things that we were anticipating that we would need to protect against were not there. And so they did all kinds of flow studies. They did wave studies. They did over the top surge studies. And so the project has been reduced down to $3,800,000 roughly. We haven't finalized the dollar and cents yet. So those deliverables are due to TDM and FEMA on 18th of December. We have a meeting this week on the 19th to discuss the other projects and to discuss that. Right now, the only thing that's holding us up from submitting phase one is the Army Corps of Engineers permit. That could be a while. We'll
Let's go
submit
back-
everything else on the
Let's go
18th.
back to Little Bay. It was almost $14 million, right?
Right.
We're going to use 13.8, and we negotiated, or no, didn't negotiate. We requested from TDM and KID that we be able to use the rest of that money in these other
Right.
projects, right?
What the judge is talking about is we had a discussion with TDM, and the money that we're not using in the Little Bay project, we'll be able, if we had some overruns on the other projects, we can allocate that money to those projects. Lamar Beach Road, it went up about $1.2 million from the original proposal. The design changed due to Army Corps of Engineer requirements and, just generally more expensive to do after almost 3 years. That project has been submitted to TDM and FEMA since a year ago. It's been there a year. All of the phase one deliverables are there. The BCA is there, and we've answered numerous RFIs. So the meeting on the 19th is to discuss what the heck, why can't we get these projects approved? And that goes the same with Shell Ridge Road. Shell Ridge Road is in the same boat. And these are current numbers that we've gotten since the project, since we submitted these projects in 2018. Okay. Public assistance, FEMA, everything is complete on this project except for Cedar Bayou. Cedar Bayou is, I would say, roughly 80% complete as of today. We're demobilizing now because of the whooping cranes are here. And so J.M. Davison will finish the project in the spring. But right now, the project is about 80% complete. We had a premature opening of Cedar Bayou due to Hurricane Nicholas, which has caused a little bit of problems, but we'll go back in the spring and we'll finish up the dredging portion of it.
John, but both Vincent Slough and Cedar Bayou are open and.
They're flowing right now.
They're flowing.
Yeah.
They're not flowing to
They're just
design
not
yet.
dug to the design.
Yeah, they're flowing. As a matter of fact, the current is really strong and the fish are rolling through there. So it's doing what it was supposed to do.
No more seaplanes landing on it.
We haven't had that in a while. We have had some, I don't know how you describe them, but they chose to park their boat right in the middle of a construction area and flip you off when you tell them to leave, or you ask them to leave. So, okay, the rest of it is pretty much what we've talked about already. This is about 3 months ago, TDM called and said, we have some extra money that we want to go ahead and go back to some of the grant applications that we had submitted previously and they were rejected. So we put together really quick some projects that we had. And we have in the generators for county facilities, we have 7 of the facilities. We have generators now priced recurrent. They've been repriced to current numbers. And so we've submitted them to TDM, and I am to understand that they're moving along. So I haven't heard anything, technically, I haven't heard any questions about them or any definitive saying, yes, you're going to get them, but they're said they were moving them along.
And you said there were 7 generators. in
7
that package.
generators. And if anybody wants me to tell you what the 7 are, I couldn't name them off right now, but I'll gladly send them to you.
Right.
The other is another drainage project that we had submitted at South Central Lamar, Section 7. David gave it to us 4 years ago. And this is a small little drainage project, but it's also in the same boat as the generators. They asked for that, they reselected that one and said, yes, you can resubmit this. So we resubmitted it and that's where we're at with it.
I'm sorry, y'all are gonna have to excuse me. I gotta go get grandkids from school.
I think we're done. Yeah, the rest of it's,
Right, any questions for John?
Doing a good job.
thank you, sir.
If not, we'll go to items for deliberation and or action. Item number 9. We have a motion.
I would like to amend this and state that we discuss the proposed revision to the Aransas County Employee Handbook regarding holiday pay for county employees as recommended by the County Benefit Committee and the County Handbook Committee. And that we talk about it and hear from Ms. Stone, who's here on the changes, also with item number 10. But my initial motion is that we amend this to just discuss it, but not take action today and consider it for action at our next meeting.
I second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
What are your
Roll
questions?
I have no hesitation or reservations about these. To be honest, I haven't had the opportunity to read them as thoroughly as I would like to because of the other items that we were discussing on today's agenda. And the last time when you brought revisions, I know you had requested that rather than taking action at that time, that we read them, digest them, maybe get some feedback and then vote on them at the next court. And I really think that's a good way to pursue.
Okay.
Proceed.
I agree. I mean, I would just like to hear, what the thinking is behind them and any urgency you feel. And then I have no special
Why can't
problem
we-
with them
why
either.
Can't we do that after a motion to approve or disapprove?
Because we would like to make it clear that today is not a good day to act on them. And there's a motion and a second.
All right, there's motion and second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
I'll make a sub motion that we go ahead and approve it as written on the agenda.
I think it's just called voting no on this motion.
Okay.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes to the amended motion.
Yes.
No. 3, 4, and 2 against.
Okay, so maybe we could go ahead and hear from Linda about where we're going with these and knowing that we'll just come back to them at the next meeting and have a formal vote on them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first policy revision is basically just to take into account that the sheriffs and the SO officers, the jailers, whenever they have to work on a holiday, federal holiday that falls on a different day from what the county observes, they have not been getting that holiday pay. So we're trying to clean this policy up so that that does not happen any further.
Could you say that again, Linda? I'm sorry.
Okay, so if a federal holiday, say for example, New Year's falls on
Okay.
Saturday, the county's observed holiday is Thursday and Friday. Then our policy states that they would be paid for working the observed holiday and does not state they would be paid for the federal holiday. So anyone who's actually working on that federal holiday is not getting paid because of the way our policy is stated. Not getting paid the holiday pay.
So would a situation be like this, that instead of working Monday through Friday, most people are still working 5 days a week, but some of them happen to work their days on Saturday and Sunday instead of just Monday through Friday. And so they land on different holidays.
Correct. The
So
law
they're getting on the
enforcement-
average far less holiday pay because they tend to be working on days that don't fall under standard county definitions of holidays.
To add to that, what happens is if they actually were off on the observed holiday, then they don't get paid. And they don't get paid, they have to work if they work on on the holiday that we're not observing, they don't get paid.
Oh.
So they could totally not get paid for a holiday.
It is
It
confusing.
is confusing.
Made it just slightly different because this was hard for me to understand. The way it currently works, if you have an employee that normally works a 5-day a week schedule, but that puts them off on Friday, Saturday. Let's use that example. If the observed holiday falls on Friday and that's their normal day off, right now they don't get paid because they wouldn't, because it's their normal day off. One of the changes we've suggested is that that be revised, that they could take that holiday on a different day that's not their normal day off, or that they would receive their normal amount of pay. Because right now they could be in this situation where they don't get paid for the observed holiday or the federal legal holiday because they don't work Friday or Saturday. So we're asking for revisions to keep that from happening, where that one employee may be off, lucky him or her, Friday and Saturday and not get any holiday pay at all. But also that we make the revision where the sheriff's department employees, if they work Friday or Saturday, that they get paid holiday pay for either one of those days. Because right now, if they work the legal holiday, they aren't getting it if we're observing the holiday on a different day. So the people who are working on Christmas aren't getting holiday pay, even though they're working the actual legal holiday. So those are the revisions we're asking for. It's to really address those two very specific circumstances. And then I did speak with Sheriff Mills, I think Linda did too, about what would be the best way to handle it for the sheriff's department. And while I know it seems maybe odd to treat them a little differently and have them be paid the holiday pay for the observed or the legal holiday, it seems to be the right thing to do because they have very little choice over when they work their shifts, especially when we have times of, pandemics. We're very shorthanded and some of them may need to work that holiday, and not getting that holiday pay is not something I think any of us ever intended.
And thank you, because even though I was the HR director, I really didn't have too much to do with payroll. So this sounds like a good correction. So that if a person were working the sheriff's department or the transfer station or somewhere where they have to be other than Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, they will either get the holiday pay on the observed day or on the day we recognize as a holiday. And if they're working, they'll still get paid for those hours.
Correct.
But it wouldn't be at the rate of time and a half. It would just be a flat.
Correct.
Okay. Were there other items that were changed in here?
Yeah, because it's a
I'd
lot
like
already.
to add, I'd like to add on this. The reason that it was brought to y'all today to get this done is because we do have Thanksgiving holiday coming up in the next pay period. And this would help us to be able to take care of the sheriff's office and their payroll for this holiday, because this is specifically why we're trying to correct it.
If we were to approve this next Monday, you feel like you couldn't get that done, or you could, but it would be really hard?
It should be, Jim, what do you think? I mean, we'll be in that pay period, but it's not on the agenda.
But it can be, because it's not too late to put it on the agenda.
She's giving me the look.
I was looking at Tracy to see if she was giving anybody stink eye.
I don't think it'll have a huge impact for Thanksgiving so much as it will in the future for the Christmas holidays, because Thanksgiving always falls on a Thursday.
Yeah.
We're lucky that way, and we always observe it on that Thursday. But that was why we did put it on this agenda. I think if we did it next week, that we could probably work together to make sure that they're not impacted in a negative way.
Okay.
Right. Thank you. Were there any other changes in the holiday section of note?
Reorganization and trying to clean up the policy so it's easier to read and understand.
Thank you.
And then on the
next
steel-toed
one,
shoes.
we're bringing this one to you for two different reasons. One, we noticed that some of the departments were not included in the policy. It was very specific to only 3 or 4 different departments. And there are a number of departments that actually require safety boots to be worn. And then also some of the employees have noticed that there's been an increase in cost due to inflation. So we're asking for a little bit higher funding for that. But we would like to have that portion of it to only be effective after January 1st so that it coincides with the budget.
Okay.
Any other?
Well, just, are you going to change the verbiage then on that new policy since it says just about the steel-toed boots? The revised policy would be effective immediately and just change that to revised effective January 1st? Or no?
Yeah, it does say per fiscal year in the policy language, so I don't think that it would, the dollar amounts just wouldn't change until the beginning of, because we're already in this budget year.
I'll defer to the county attorney's office.
I think our intent was that starting January 1st, it would go up to 175 for reimbursement, and that it would be one pair of boots per fiscal year. Or if they didn't use the entire amount of reimbursement, that they could use whatever remains toward a second pair of boots should they have a work-related damage to their part of their uniform, essentially, which is what this is. We could change the proposed language on our cover sheet to say that this entire policy would go into effect on January 1st.
Well, in the deal that I read, the current policy appears that non-steel-toed boots are qualified, the way I read it.
No,
If you, to me, if you read on through it, it talks about steel-toed boots, not the one that you're putting up now, but the existing one.
well, yeah,
Gave me the impression that normal boots under the current policy would be covered.
but the title was steel-toed boots, so I'm not sure.
Titles don't usually.
Last sentence, Commissioner, on the, starting with an employee may receive reimbursement for 1 pair or 2 pairs of boots.
Maybe it's a question of how boots is defined, but I mean,
Yeah.
as long as the county
It
attorney
says
is.
Steel-toed boots, but the way I interpreted it when I read the deal was that somebody could have been asking for normal boots to be paid for.
Well, since you get to bring this back to us on, since you get to bring it back to us on Monday, there's time to look at that and see if you have any concern about the wording.
Their correction, I think.
Takes care of it?
clarified all
Okay,
that.
good.
That's
But
how it's
I-
been put into practice, is that it's only been reimbursement for steel-toed boots. But you'll see that in the revision, we added the word steel-toed in there a couple more times.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
Ben, I noticed
Yeah.
y'all redlined a bunch of the stuff that to me made it look like maybe nobody has ever asked, but it appeared to me that.
Kind of cleaned up.
Could have.
Yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
cleanup because this was always intended to be for required safety shoes, which is the steel-toed only. And that's how
I
we've been
realize
doing
that.
it.
Mhm.
So this
Sometimes
just makes
doesn't
it.
Get written.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Sometimes you might have the best intentions, but if it doesn't get written right.
Any other discussion? Have a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Motion
Second.
made and
So what are we
seconded.
gonna do on 10? Are we going to? Motion.
Bubba, did you second the adjourn or did? Pat?
Yup.
Commissioner Castro.
Oh.
Yeah, unanimous. I
Aye.
bet it's unanimous.
Aye.
Jack's not here then.